They say curiosity killed the cat, but no one ever mentions how slowly and painfully that death comes. I never considered myself a tech genius or anything. Just your average guy who knew enough to get by online, watching videos and scrolling through social media like everyone else. My friend Tom was the real computer whiz, always talking about encryption and network security and all these concepts that went completely over my head. One night after a few beers, he started going on about the dark web, telling me how there were all these hidden forums and marketplaces you could only access with special browsers. Places where people sold drugs and weapons and shared conspiracy theories. I laughed it off, thinking it was all exaggerated stories meant to scare people who did not understand technology, like those ridiculous urban legends about red rooms and hitmen for hire that you hear about in YouTube videos. Tom got serious though, and offered to show me how to access it safely, just so I could see for myself that it was not all made up. I should have declined, should have changed the subject, should have done literally anything else, but instead I leaned forward and said, "Sure, show me." The next day, Tom helped me set up this special browser on my laptop and showed me how to access different sites through these weird-looking links full of random letters and numbers. Most of it was disappointingly mundane, just forums that looked like they were designed in the early 2000s, people selling fake IDs or discussing politics with too many conspiracy theories thrown in. I thanked Tom for the tour, but honestly felt a bit let down, like when you finally ride a roller coaster you were terrified of as a kid and realize it is not that scary after all. A few days later, bored and alone in my apartment, I decided to explore a bit more on my own, clicking through different links I had bookmarked during Tom's tutorial. That is when I found it. A simple black page with gray text that said, "Welcome to Watch Me," a forum dedicated to observing. There was something about the simplicity of it that drew me in, and I clicked to enter, expecting another boring marketplace or conspiracy forum. The site loaded to reveal thread after thread with ordinary-sounding titles, things like Portland Guy Routine or Atlanta Woman's Schedule or Melbourne Family Habits. Curious, I clicked on one called Chicago Apartment 7B, and what I saw made my blood run cold. It was an incredibly detailed description of some random person's daily life, from when they woke up at 6:43 a.m. to what they ate for breakfast to their commute route to work, even noting that they always locked their door twice before leaving. There were comments below from other users, suggestions on how to best approach this person, what their weaknesses might be, even discussions about what they seemed afraid of based on their browsing history and private conversations. One comment casually mentioned, "His biggest fear seems to be home invasion," ironic considering his patio door can be jimmied open in under 30 seconds. I felt sick as I realized what I was looking at. This was not fiction or fantasy. These were real people being watched, stalked, their most private moments recorded by strangers who treated it like some sick game. I scrolled through more threads, each one more disturbing than the last, wondering if I should report this to someone. But who would I even tell? And how would I explain how I found it? I was about to close the browser when a new thread appeared at the top of the page, simply titled, "New Target Acquired." Against my better judgment, I clicked it and saw only a city name, my city name, and a post time of just 2 minutes ago. My hands started shaking as I scrolled down to see the first comment, which simply read, "Male, 28, lives alone, works from home as a graphic designer, no pets, no security system, naive enough to explore places he should not, currently wearing a gray t-shirt and blue pajama pants." I looked down at my gray shirt and blue pants in horror, feeling my heart hammering against my ribs as I slammed my laptop shut and jumped up from my desk. This had to be a coincidence, right? Just someone making a lucky guess based on my IP address or something. Tom had warned me about not using proper security. I paced around my apartment, checking that all my windows and doors were locked, pulling all the curtains closed, telling myself I was overreacting. After about 20 minutes, I had almost convinced myself it was nothing when my phone buzzed with a notification, a new email from an address I did not recognize, with no subject line. I should have deleted it immediately, but instead I opened it and saw only an image attachment. With trembling fingers I tapped to open it and saw a photo of myself, sitting at my desk, staring at my laptop with a horrified expression, the timestamp on the photo reading just minutes earlier, when I had been looking at that thread. The angle was from behind me, as if someone was standing in the corner of my room, but that was impossible. I lived alone and there was no one else here. Panic surged through me as I spun around, scanning every corner, looking under furniture, in closets, finding nothing, no cameras, no people, no explanation for how someone took that picture. I grabbed my phone and keys, rushing for the door, deciding I would go to Tom's place and figure this out. But when I threw the door open, I froze in place. There on my welcome mat sat a small package wrapped in brown paper with my name written on it in neat handwriting. Fighting every instinct screaming at me to run, I picked it up and unwrapped it, finding a USB drive and a handwritten note that simply said, "We have been watching you for longer than you think, and now it is your turn to become a watcher. Plug this in and join us, or become someone else's target. The choice is yours." I stood there, the USB drive feeling impossibly heavy in my hand, realizing with growing horror that closing my browser and leaving my apartment would not fix this. They already had me, had probably been watching me for days or weeks before I ever found their forum, and now I had a choice that was not really a choice at all, because we both knew what happens to the targets on that forum. It was right there in all those threads, the final posts, always so clinical, so detached, their routines memorized, their fears exploited, their lives ended or forever changed by watchers, who would soon move on to the next target, the next thread, the next game. They say the dark web is like an iceberg. What you see online is just the tip, but beneath the surface lies something much more vast and sinister. I used to think those stories about red rooms and live-streamed violence were just urban legends, cautionary tales to keep curious people away from places they should not venture. I was a journalist specializing in cybercrime, always searching for that one big story that would make my career, and I was convinced I could handle whatever I found. That confidence is what led me down a rabbit hole I wish I had never discovered. A place where human life becomes nothing more than merchandise with a price tag, where faceless viewers bid on the fate of kidnapped individuals like they are bidding on antiques at a regular auction. I had been following a series of disappearances in my city for months, all seemingly unconnected, except for one strange detail. Each victim had reported unusual activity on their computers in the days before they vanished, and when I began connecting these digital breadcrumbs, they all pointed to something called the auction. It started innocently enough, just research for an article I was writing about internet safety. I had sources, people who knew how to navigate the darker corners of the web safely, and they provided me with links, passwords, and instructions. I took precautions, using a VPN, covering my webcam, and working from a public Wi-Fi spot rather than my home network. The first few layers of the dark web were exactly what I expected: illegal marketplaces selling drugs, weapons, and stolen data. But as I dug deeper, following hints dropped in obscure forums, I found mentions of an exclusive streaming service where members with enough cryptocurrency could watch and participate in something called the auction. Most people dismissed it as a hoax, but I found a forum where someone had posted what they claimed was a recording of one such event. The video quality was terrible, deliberately obscured, but what I could make out made my stomach turn: a person, bound to a chair, while a mechanically altered voice described them like merchandise, listing physical attributes, personal information, and then, most disturbingly, opening the bidding on what would happen to them. I convinced myself it was fake, just some elaborate roleplay or a viral marketing stunt for a horror movie, but I could not shake the feeling that there was something authentic about the fear in that person's eyes. I spent weeks gathering more information, cross-referencing details with the missing persons cases I had been tracking, and slowly, horrifyingly, the connections became undeniable. These were not actors. These were real people being auctioned off to the highest bidder, and the winners could decide their fate, from relatively merciful options like simple release, which was rarely bid on, to increasingly sadistic scenarios that I cannot bring myself to describe. I needed more evidence before going to the police, something concrete that could not be dismissed as an internet rumor. So I used my technical skills to trace IP addresses, follow digital money trails, and eventually, I found a way to access the next live stream, scheduled for midnight on Friday. That night, I sat in my darkened apartment, laptop screen illuminating my face as I logged into the stream through a series of proxy servers. I felt sick with anticipation, but I told myself this was necessary, that I needed to document this horror to expose it. The stream began with a black screen, then a logo appeared, a simple stylized gavel, before switching to a view of an empty chair in what looked like a basement or warehouse. A voice, distorted and unrecognizable, welcomed the viewers and announced the night's auction would begin shortly. I recorded everything, taking screenshots, noting usernames that appeared in the chat window where people were already discussing how much cryptocurrency they had prepared for bidding. Then the first lot was brought in. A terrified woman in her 30s who the announcer introduced as a former IT specialist from Boston, and I watched in horror as faceless accounts began placing bids on different scenarios for her fate, while she pleaded for help, unaware that her audience was deciding whether she would live or die. I was so focused on documenting everything, on gathering evidence, that I did not notice the strange glitches on my screen at first, or the way my webcam light had turned on despite being covered. It was only when the current auction ended and the screen went black that I saw my own reflection in the dark monitor, and behind me, a shadow that should not have been there. Before I could turn around, I felt something press against my neck, a sharp prick, and then numbness spreading through my body. I tried to reach for my phone, but my arms would not respond. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. As my vision began to blur, the last thing I saw was my laptop screen coming back to life, the auction logo reappearing, and a message in the chat window that made my blood freeze. Next lot. Investigative journalist, 28, New York. Caught spying on our operation. Starting bid, 5 Bitcoin for release, 10 Bitcoin for creative suggestions. The bidding begins in 1 hour. As darkness claimed me, I realized the terrible truth. In my quest to expose the auction, I had not only found it, I had become its next item up for bid, and somewhere out there, faceless strangers were already deciding my fate with the casual click of a mouse. I always thought the dark web was just a place for criminals and hackers, nothing that would ever touch my normal life. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, as they say. I was browsing through forums late one night when I couldn't sleep, reading about strange things people had found while exploring hidden sites. That's when I stumbled across a marketplace called Doll Maker's Workshop. Most of the listings were ordinary collectible dolls, nothing special, until I saw one seller with unusually high ratings. Custom lifelike replicas, the listing said, with a description claiming they could create a doll based on any photo you sent them. The reviews were filled with comments about how eerily accurate the dolls were, how they captured not just appearances but somehow the essence of the person. I laughed it off as exaggeration, but something about it kept pulling at my mind. After a few glasses of wine and against my better judgment, I decided to test their claims. I sent them a selfie I had taken earlier that week, standing in front of my apartment building, wearing my favorite red sweater and black jeans. The price was steep, nearly $300, but I justified it as an experiment, a story I could tell at parties. After payment, a simple message appeared. Watching begins. Delivery in 7 days. I dismissed it as creepy marketing and quickly forgot about the whole thing, as work consumed my attention for the next week. The package arrived exactly 7 days later, a plain brown box with no return address sitting on my doorstep when I got home from work. I brought it inside, oddly nervous as I cut through the tape and opened it. Nestled in bubble wrap was a doll about 12 inches tall, and my heart nearly stopped when I pulled it free. The craftsmanship was incredible, unsettling in its precision. The doll had my face, every detail perfect from the small mole near my left eyebrow to the slight unevenness of my smile. But what made my skin crawl wasn't just the face, it was the clothes. The doll wasn't wearing the red sweater and jeans from my photo. It was dressed in the exact outfit I had worn yesterday, a blue blouse with white flowers and gray slacks that I had never posted online. I dropped the doll back into the box, my hands shaking as I searched for an explanation. Maybe they had social media accounts I had forgotten about. Maybe they had guessed based on my style. But deep down, I knew there was no logical explanation for this level of detail. I considered throwing it away immediately, but something stopped me. Instead, I placed the box on my kitchen counter and tried to distract myself with television, constantly glancing back at it throughout the evening. Eventually, exhaustion won out over fear, and I went to bed, making sure to lock my bedroom door before falling into an uneasy sleep filled with dreams of tiny footsteps and watching eyes. Morning sunlight streamed through my curtains when I woke up, momentarily making me forget the previous night's creepiness. I stretched and got out of bed, convincing myself I had overreacted. It was just a doll after all, probably just a coincidence about the clothes. I unlocked my bedroom door and headed toward the kitchen to make coffee, but froze in the hallway. The box on the counter was open, empty. My heart pounding, I frantically looked around until I spotted the doll sitting upright on my couch, positioned as if watching the front door. I approached it slowly, noticing something different about its face. The eyes that had been so carefully crafted to match mine were now missing, leaving two dark, empty sockets that seemed to stare at me despite their emptiness. A small piece of paper was folded in the doll's lap. With trembling fingers, I unfolded it and read the words that made my blood turn to ice. "Watching you was fun. Now it is your turn." I backed away, bumping into my coffee table and nearly falling. That's when I noticed something else, something I had missed in my panic. All around my apartment, on shelves and windowsills and furniture, were tiny scraps of fabric, bits of my clothing that had been cut away while I slept. And worse, small tufts of what I recognized as my own hair. The police were sympathetic but ultimately unhelpful when I called them. They took the doll as evidence and dusted for fingerprints, finding none. The website was gone when they tried to trace it, the cryptocurrency payment impossible to track. They suggested I stay with a friend while they investigated, so I packed a bag and went to my sister's place across town. That night, huddled under blankets in her guest room, I finally began to feel safe again. My sister had installed new locks and an alarm system after her own break-in scare last year, and knowing someone else was in the house with me helped calm my nerves. I was almost drifting off to sleep when my phone chimed with a notification. A new email from an address I didn't recognize, with no subject line. I should have deleted it, but instead, I opened it. There was no message, just an attachment. A photo of me, taken through my sister's guest room window mere minutes ago. I was looking down at my phone, the glow illuminating my face in the darkness. Beneath the photo was a single line of text. "My eyes work better than the doll's ever did. I have not slept properly in weeks now. I moved to a new city, changed my name, deleted all my social media. I stay in a high-rise apartment with security cameras and doormen, windows covered with blackout curtains that never open. I've checked this place for hidden cameras and bugs so many times I've lost count. Sometimes I think I see glimpses of dolls in store windows that look like me, wearing clothes I wore days before. The few times I've gone to investigate, they've disappeared by the time I reach the display. The police have officially closed my case, citing lack of evidence and no further incidents. They think it's over. I know better. Last night I found a small piece of fabric on my pillow, cut from the pajamas I was currently wearing. And this morning when I went to brush my teeth, I found a tiny doll-sized hairbrush on my bathroom counter, with strands of my hair wrapped around its bristles. I don't know how much longer I can live like this, jumping at shadows and constantly looking over my shoulder. But I do know one thing for certain. Whatever or whoever is watching me, they're still here, still playing their game. And I'm afraid that soon it will be my turn, just like the note promised.